I've just had the privilege of sitting down with Graham Bell. Graham is a graphic designer and has been for 27 years, I think. And over that time, he's an artist. He's expressed his artistic flair through many big brands. He has been responsible for producing the public face of many companies, my own included. And I've always enjoyed working with Graham. He's got a fantastic perspective on the industry and the work that he does. And I think seeing the way that he's embraced change over those years that he's worked in the industry and his perspective moving forward with the changes we face has made for a really interesting conversation. I've really appreciated his time, and I think you'll enjoy this conversation with Graham Bell. Graham, hello.
Hi.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
I really appreciate
Thanks
it.
for having me.
It's
good
good.
to see you.
And all these years that we've been doing, well, seeing each other through climbing down at Boulder Shack and graphic design with Boulder Shack, that you've been helping us out. You've been supporting us for 10 years now, I think.
Coming up that way. Yeah, long time.
It's been good.
Yeah.
Do you want to just start off? Just tell us how did you get into graphic design? Because you've been doing it for how many years now?
A long time. I've been a graphic designer been a professional designer since 1999. Prior to that, I graduated from university in Southampton in 1996. My degree is in marketing with design. And while I was at university, I used a Mac for the first time in probably about 94. So they were very new, and doing desktop publishing was a very new thing. Photoshop was kind of version 1 or something, and it's on about version 30 now. So it was a very new thing, and it was so advanced to be able to edit a photograph or be able to make these small little changes to things and be able to lay things out. It was brand new, and I found it so fascinating and so exciting that any opportunity I had to use that technology at that time, I did. And prior to that, for people that don't know, graphic design would have been done by hand. So magic markers and hand drawn and typography using block type. It's like it had been for hundreds of years, really. Block typing, setting up typography. And you can see it in stuff that was produced in the late 80s, early 90s. Most of the fonts are very standardized. So they're kind of like Arial, Helvetica, kind of Gothic fonts. And they're very sort of standardized fonts. And that's putting my nerd hat on and knowing all about fonts, of course, but that's part of the job.
What was it like? Because, I mean, when I think of not using a computer to produce graphic design work, it's like that's in another age.
It's another age.
It's just like so far gone.
It is. I mean, in the summer of 94, I got a summer job working down in Christchurch, 15 miles away or so, working in a company where they had in-house printers. They're a big insurance company. They're based in Bournemouth. And they had their own in-house printers. And I was working in a great big building on an industrial estate which had a printing presses in it. And they kept all of the artwork there, but it was all physical copies. And the way it was done, it's known as camera-ready artwork in those days.
Camera-ready
artwork. And what it was they'd all been produced probably by hand, laid out by hand, forms and letterheads, put together and taped up. So literally things being taped to a piece of paper known as a bromide, which is a specific type of paper. And then they had a massive professional camera, static camera, which is huge, about the size of a small car, that would sit above. And then they would have a tray that would go underneath, like a thing that would go under with a dolly, and it would slide under, and they would photograph this bromide artwork. And then that would create the printing plate that they would then put on the press and print from. And of course, when Macs came in, and suddenly you're going what's known as DTP, direct to plate, it's also desktop publishing, it's the same acronym, but you'd be able to produce things on a Mac and then send the artwork straight to the printer from the computer. I mean, it just revolutionised things so much.
That camera then just becomes
obsolete. But when I was in 94, they had one guy in there that was what they would call a Mac operator. So he basically was a very early adopter, I suppose, and an expert. And I found it absolutely fascinating because I was kind of doing it at university, but I had this summer job where I was in charge of sorting out all these bromide pieces of artwork and the printing plates. And so it was quite a handy job to have for that summer because it was directly related to what I ended up doing as a career. And that was a turning point for me, really, because I found it fascinating watching this guy with a Mac producing all these transparencies and things, pieces of artwork that were suddenly making this old tech look like something out of the Ark, whereas only a couple of years before, that would have been how they were producing everything. So this camera-ready artwork suddenly went out the window.
Did it change what people, like what you were producing?
Yeah.
It's fun, isn't it? I don't even think of letterhead as artwork.
Yeah, but
It's just like that's
is.
what
And
you
I
do.
still
in
I don't
30
do many of them
seconds.
anymore. I got asked to do one yesterday. Actually, something I've got to do after we finish here.
Right.
I don't do many letterheads because a lot of people nowadays obviously would just do it in Word,
Mm.
or you don't even need letterhead. You just digitally send it.
Yeah.
So it's like comp slips. I used to do compliment slips for people
Yeah,
all the
yeah,
time.
yeah. My dad used to have those for his business.
Yeah. And they're a third. So the way we used to lay them out was they're a third of A4. So they're 210 wide, 99 deep. So you get 3 on an A4 sheet, 3 up as it's known.
Yeah.
And then, you'd produce them. I used to do them all the time. And, who uses comp slips nowadays? I mean, there's something from the 70s, aren't they? They seem like so old-fashioned now.
I remember working with my dad. He had an estate agent for many years. Yeah, and that was like that would go into every letter. He'd hand out with different things.
Exactly.
Yeah, and he'd have the guillotine in the back office where he'd have to cut everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, so in that kind of early to mid 90s, things changed rapidly. Technology moved on really fast. And it did make people who were traditional graphic designers that had been doing it with drawing, essentially, and almost like draftsmen laying stuff out with rulers and tape. And, suddenly that was like out of the Ark. That was gone because suddenly it was all being done on a Mac. Not so much a PC in those days. PCs weren't really capable. Nowadays, it's a lot more even. Although I haven't used a PC since 1997 or something. Okay. Not at all.
Yeah, okay.
But suddenly things changed. And I was learning it. You were kind of learning stuff about a career that didn't even exist at that point.
So then at that point, when we're now using computers, Macs, to produce the artwork and going straight to the printer.
So I'd always been interested in music's a big thing for me, and records and buying records I've done since I was an early teenager, and I still do buy records regularly. And quite often I buy things just on the strength of the artwork. I'm fascinated by album art, and that's how I got fascinated and interested in marketing, in design, and all the things that go with it. From going to record shops and seeing these amazing band artworks, particularly bands like the Smiths, Happy Mondays, those kinds of ones where the artwork was really interesting, quite unusual, a bit out there, a bit abstract. Loved all that. But also things like Elton John. There's a particular Elton John album that I look at, and I still look at now and think, who came up with that? That is so good. It's so cleverly put together.
I'm going to have to go and look at this.
Goodbye Yellow Brick Road album. It's an amazing cover.
Yeah.
And there are so many. So that got me interested in it. I did my degree in marketing with design, made sure I did all the elements that were the design-based ones. And the beginning of my course was where we were drawing stuff, having to draw the frontage of Coral bookmakers or something and work out how you could make it look different. By the end of my course, everything was being done. We were doing everything on computer.
Really?
So it changed in those couple of years.
Funny,
3 years.
I was chatting to my sister yesterday. She did an architectural course. That was probably in, that was 17 years ago, maybe. So what's that? About 2009.
6, 7, 8, 9, yeah.
Yeah, and she was saying she was the last course where they got to choose whether they did hand-drawn
Yeah.
or CAD design. The next course after her, there wasn't the option. It had to be CAD.
Yeah. Interesting.
And so I guess maybe that as an industry was perhaps even a little bit further behind because it was more technical perhaps.
Exactly. I mean, things moved on so fast. That job I had in '94, by about 2 or 3 years later, that building full of printer machinery and cameras and all these plates, printing plates and bromide artwork, well, they got rid of the building. They didn't even need it anymore. Just need a guy with a Mac with a big hard drive, because suddenly everything was just files on a computer. It moved that quick. That shift was really fast. I left university in '96. I worked in marketing for a few years, first kind of couple of jobs. By '99, I was very keen to work in advertising. So I got a job here in Southampton, an advertising agency. But it wasn't the design side, it was more the kind of the suit side, if you like. But I was fascinated by what was going on in the design studio more than actually what I was doing in my actual job. And it just wasn't for me. So I left, moved to London, thought that's the only way I'm going to get my career properly moving. By this time, I was my mid to late 20s.
It's a big smoke.
Up to big smoke. Got a job working in a funny office at Brent Cross on the North Circular near Wembley, right by IKEA at Wembley.
Yeah.
Near there. And the job was half design and half marketing. So I kind of talked my way into it because I didn't really have a portfolio, but I could use a Mac, which still then was still quite a sought after thing. You could use all the software. And it was working for a company that did merchandise for motorsport, which I've got a big interest in anyway. And their main clients were Ducati, Ferrari, and Shell. My first day, got the train up from Southampton on my first day, and my meeting was at the Shell building with Shell, with the owner of the building, to talk about what we were going to do for their next range of merchandise. And it was a real baptism of fire, but fantastic. Moved up, got a flat in London and rented up there, and it was great. And then after 3 months, I was made redundant because one of their clients pulled out, lost their funding. So that was that. So then I was living in London with no job, but I did have a bit of a portfolio by that time. So I started applying for jobs, looking for the right thing, made sure I was applying for a few marketing jobs, but mainly I wanted to be a graphic designer because I'd had a taste for it by then. Things had moved on fast in those last few years.
What was happening though? Because whilst all this is going on, and people are, you say they're like, it was a sought after thing to be able to use the Mac. What was happening to the people who weren't using Mac? Because did people naturally transition into saying, well, I've been sticking things down on this paper for the last 20 years. Like, right. And did they transition into saying, okay, well, now we'll just adapt into this?
That's right. I think it was a real sea change, because I think, depending on people's age, probably there were probably people that thought, right, that's it, I'm out, I'm not retraining. But I think a lot of people had to suddenly think, I'm going to have to retrain, or I'm going to lose my career here. And that echoes the world we're in today, but we'll come on to that later on. But I think people had to retrain very quickly. Otherwise, you were going to be left behind, because it moved so quick.
I remember being, and maybe, like there's little experiences that shape our sort of views on the world, and maybe this is part of it. One of my good friends, his dad was a photographer, and I remember going on to set with him. He was a car photographer, and I was, 12 years old, and I went down, had like a work experience day with him. Cool. I think it was probably because we needed a bit of babysitting, and I ended up getting shipped off to him for the day. But it was amazing, and we went and photographed this Toyota car in a studio, and I remember all the effort that went into like polishing everything, making sure everything was pristine. The cameras got set up, the lights. He was doing all the settings on things. I didn't have a clue what was going on. And it was pretty much came down to about 3 clicks of the button. Yeah. And then it was like, cool, right, let's pack it all up and go home. I was fascinated. I thought, what an incredible thing.
Yeah.
And maybe 4 or 5 years later, as I was sort of in my late teens, digital cameras became a thing overnight, I guess.
Yeah.
And he was around for dinner, and I remember as a family we were talking about how he decided to not move into digital cameras. He was just like, I don't want to do it.
No.
And I remember thinking, oh shit, like you've kind of like, he was so passionate about it.
Film. Yeah,
He loved it. But just photography, but it just, the love of it fell out for him, or
I think that happened with a lot of designers.
And he
same
just,
kind of thing.
it was just not, he just, the energy, he didn't have the motivation, the energy to transfer over to it. And then that was it. And I don't know how much he kind of reflected back on that decision, but like,
suddenly
it then
changed
couldn't.
overnight.
And within a few years, he couldn't be a photographer anymore because he just didn't know. He just refused to kind of go with it.
You've got to move forward with it, I think, if you want your career to continue. I mean, at that time, so we're now talking about 99 probably, graphic design was still seen, in my eyes, I still think, look back at it and think it was a bit of a dark art. If you could be a graphic designer and you were good at it, you were in demand, because not a lot of people, although there were plenty of people out there probably like me who'd done it, a bit of it at university. If you were older, as you were in your 40s or 50s, you were suddenly becoming a bit out of date if you weren't keeping up with the tech. I mean, I remember certainly in my last year of my degree, there was an opportunity came up to do an evening course in desktop publishing, which we were doing a bit on my course, but someone had sold it to me. This is the future. This is how everything's going to be designed and produced from now on. So I didn't, alongside my final year of my degree, where I was doing my dissertation and doing all my other stuff, getting ready for exams, I did an evening course with the girlfriend I had at the time. The two of us did it, and we both went on and did this evening course in how to learn how to use desktop publishing software.
Right.
Quark Express was the program, and it became the industry standard for the next 7 or 8, 9 years. And that was invaluable. I still look back and think learning that in that evening course really helped me at the beginning of my career, because then I could produce stuff, and learn the skills I needed.
And you were young enough, or kind of enough of a information sponge at that age to want to learn really about what's.
I was really eager. I wanted to learn it. I was very keen to take it forward and all that sort of thing. And also I remember going, somehow managed to get an invite, or saw an advert in the magazine or something, a design magazine, about this new piece of software that Adobe were creating called Acrobat. And it was brand new. It was literally brand new. And they were doing a day course in what Acrobat was.
Right.
And this would, again, probably been like 1997 or something. And PDFs weren't even a thing, really. It was new, brand new. So I went up to, I think it was up in Essex or somewhere like that. And I went for the day, signed up and thought, well, this is going to be interesting. Went for the day, and it was a day hotel kind of thing. It was all these industry professionals there. There was a lot of people there, all learning about this new bit of software. Nowadays, that would all be done on YouTube or stream live or however it'd be done. Back then, you had to go to a hotel in Essex to learn about Acrobat. So I went along, they gave us a free disc, which had like a very early version. And basically it seemed rubbish. I mean, it didn't seem to be anything that it's not going to take off, Acrobat. And it was weird because obviously nowadays PDF is everything. We use it all day long for all the time, and all the way through my career. Really, it's been a thing. But when I got made redundant, started applying for jobs. I had interviews at the BBC. I had a really interesting but bizarre interview at Playboy TV, which was, wasn't what I thought it was going to be. When I was telling all my friends, I was under the impression I was going to be interviewed at the Playboy mansion by Hugh Hefner, kind of in my head. What it was a small dingy office above Woolworths near Heathrow. I mean, it was a horrible place. And I walked away thinking, I'll never, ever want to work there.
So I've got to pick on that one a little bit. Sorry. What was the gig there?
So I applied for, as I said earlier, I was applying for jobs that were marketing based and also graphic design based, because I had feet in both camps. So one day I had I applied because I was living in London. I was signed up with recruitment agencies that dealt in marketing and creative specialisms, and that was cool. I had a few interviews, one of which was to be a product designer for Tweenies at the BBC. So I went to White City, had an interview at TV Centre. Tweenies was the kids' TV show that was just about to launch, and they were going to do a merchandise line, and they wanted, because I had a merchandise experience. It wasn't for me. I didn't have enough experience really, but I did go for the interview, and it was fascinating. And then a few days later, they phoned me up. I had an agency phone me up and say, "Another job's come up. It's more of a marketing role than design, but we thought it might appeal to you. You might be interested."
You're the guy for the job.
Well, yeah, exactly. I don't know. But they said it is at Playboy TV, and would you be interested? And I was like, well, yeah, maybe. So as I say, I didn't know a lot about it. There wasn't really in those days a way of really being able to research the job or anything. So I went along, and it was in Hayes, which is near Heathrow, above Woolworths, in this horrible little office. And as soon as I walked in, I thought, this is awful. I'm never going to work here.
Yeah.
And went through the interview, but walked out the door thinking, even if they were to offer it to me, I don't want it.
Because that's the thing, right? So if you're a graphic designer at that time and now, I get, but like every single business needs design work done. Every single business needs to advertise and market, and so you get to choose. I say choose. You there's the option of it's required as a graphic designer to work in every nook and cranny of the industries that exist.
And I like to think I'm sure we'll come on to it, but I kind of have as well. I've worked for so many different businesses. I think in my career it's hard to quantify the actual number, but I normally say it's between 55 and 60,000 pieces of artwork that I've created on my own, which is, sizable, and across pretty much every industry, whether it's from sport, professional sport, religion, even insurance, fast-moving consumer goods, hand dryers, toilet rolls, tyres, motor racing, education,
climbing walls,
lots of stuff to do with climbing walls, and everything in between, footwear, clothing, racing engines.
Maybe it's not the industry, maybe it's the people in the office and everything. But like, what separates it? Like, what's kind of, when you're looking at working with a company or an organisation or an industry, what attracts you to it? What makes you want to go and be in that?
You've got to feel inspired as a creative. You've got to walk in and think, yeah, I really want to work with them. And sometimes, obviously, and like any job, you're doing it because you get paid to do it, which is great. And I feel very blessed and very lucky and very grateful for the fact that I've made a career out of being a graphic designer because I love doing it. And I was saying to one of my kids yesterday, we were talking about jobs and careers and things, and I said I love it so much that it's kind of the thing where you would, if you didn't have to, you could do it for free, because I love creating stuff from scratch, where you start with a blank sheet of paper or a blank screen and you go, right, what am I going to do now? And you take nothing and make something. It's kind of that artisan thing that is really nice to be able to actually.
It's a cliche to say that if you love your work, you'll never work a day for the rest of your life.
It is a cliche, but so it's very true.
That you've found your click, that you've found the thing that you love.
You do have to pay the rent, so to speak. You do need to,
and
that's where.
And there's a grind to it as well.
There is, and I've been very lucky that generally, all the way through my career, I would certainly say up until COVID, very busy every day, really busy, loads of work. COVID and things more recently, industry changes have altered that, for better, for worse. But generally, I've had a really good career of it. But going back to what happened after those interviews, I then got another interview offer of another interview, which was interesting because this one was working as an in-house designer, and that means working for a big company. They're a multinational, They were based in Slough, whereas I was living in West London, and so Slough wasn't that far away. But I was it wasn't really where my head was at, and thinking, oh, I'm going to go and work in Slough. It doesn't sound particularly exciting. But I went along for the interview, thinking, well, I might just work as a stopgap, I suppose. Maybe that BBC job will come off, or.
Yeah.
So I went along for the interview, and when I sat down, the people were lovely, and it was interesting products. It was working on. They were a fulfillment house for all of the major banks, so Barclaycard, Amex, Royal Bank of Scotland, NatWest, Post Office, Lloyds. They were all their clients. And they used to do all the credit card protection, mobile phone insurance, and all of those kinds of add-on products that bank accounts quite often have, or packaged accounts have. And it was creating all the artwork that goes with all of that sort of thing. So on one hand, I was thinking, oh, this is quite dry. But the people were really nice. And the interesting thing was with that job was that the reason the job would come available is because on one morning, the graphic designer was killed on his way to work in the Paddington Rail disaster, which was quite a weird environment to go into to be interviewed for his job. This poor lad, Antonio, was just on his way to work, and he got on the train to Paddington, and the train crashed. And so he didn't turn up for work and sadly died. And so they were desperate for a designer. I was available immediately because I'd been made redundant. I didn't have to give any notice. And because of that, I kind of felt quite, it was really important to go and put your best foot forward and make a thing of it. Because you're walking into an office where everyone was reeling from the death of one of their colleagues. I ended up staying there for 4 years and absolutely loved it, really happy. Worked in Slough, lived in Slough for a bit, commuted from Southampton for a bit.
Because of, maybe I'm a bit of a tangent here, but because of the circumstances that helped you gel into the team?
Yeah, without a doubt. It was a hard thing to go into because I was managing a junior designer as well, who was a bit younger than me, and he had really looked up to this guy who had died. And so it was a difficult sort of job to go into from that point of view, certainly in the first few weeks, because I had to make the job my own. But I ended up making it my own, loving working there, did loads of really good work, really interesting stuff, and worked there up until I got made redundant, by which time I was living back in Southampton, commuting up to Slough, and their business had altered and they wanted to lose their print and design division because there were 7 of us in a team, 2 designers. And so unfortunately I got made redundant, which was a real shame.
When you say you made it your own, what do you mean by that?
I think I kind of instead of using all the process and things that the previous guy had put in place, I kind of talked to the other people and said, I feel we need to change this to this. And they were quite happy to kind of close the book on him and his legacy, and for me to take it forward with my way of doing file naming and stock code referencing, and because there's massive archive of artwork, huge. And so I was quite keen to kind of put my own stamp on the job instead of just living in his shadow because of the way things had happened. I think it's probably quite similar to whenever you go into a new job, you kind of want it to be your job, not the previous person's job that you're covering. And I certainly felt that I needed to be respectful to the other employees with their memories of Antonio, who obviously I never met. But I also wanted to make sure that it was my job, not his job that I was covering off.
Yeah, because I guess the power that it has for the graphic, the head graphic designing or the team of graphic designers for an organisation really shapes the perception and what that company is and the representation of it in the public, which is what the company is, right?
Yeah,
exactly. How people perceive it. Do you feel is that a pressure? Is that part of the attraction of the job where you get to
There is pressure, and I think it is part of the attraction because Yeah, quite often you're kind of shaping how that business is going to look externally, and it's your ideas, and that goes from whether it's a national brand or a local climbing gym or whatever it might be. The way that the idea you come up with, as long as it's approved by the people above, the client, that's the real buzz, I suppose, is when you see your work in the public domain that you've come up with from a blank sheet of paper, and that goes to whether you're seeing it in a local, a small advert in a local magazine, or whether you're seeing a national campaign that's all of your work. Well, I've had both ends of that. I've worked at the very top, highest profile, and the very low sort of small advert for a cleaning lady. It's always nice to see your work up in lights, as it were. The first time that happened, I was in Manchester and walked past Thomas Cook, I think it was, and I'd done a load of work for P&O Cruises at the time.
Okay.
And walked past, and the whole of the front window was all the brochures I'd produced. Literally, they must have had about 30 brochures in this front window display, and they were all the ones I'd done. That was the first time I'd seen my work in the public domain, I think. It was probably about 2004 by that time, I suppose, and it was amazing to see, and it's a real buzz when you see that. And I've had it many, many, many times since, and it's still, all these years later, it's still great when you see your work out in public. And that's something you can't really quantify. That it's sort of, it's a real payoff. It's nice to have that without wanting to sound like egotistic or whatever. It is lovely to see your work out on display.
I
and getting paid for it.
Yeah, like that to see the fruits of your labour,
Yes,
or whatever.
exactly,
But to be able to point at something and say that
there is
I've
one
contributed.
pinnacle of that, which I'll come on to a bit later on maybe, which was just the most incredible experience of seeing my work. It was
Go on.
well, okay, so basically, like the time moved on, I got made redundant. I decided to start my own business, and I was able to take the work that I had been doing for my employer with all the banking work. They needed a designer to cover off the design work after I'd left, after I'd been made redundant, just for a few months until they got an agency in place. And they came to me and they said, would you pause your job search and think about just doing this work for us for 3 months? And I said, well, I'm looking for a job locally in Southampton, and I'm not sure if it's what I want to be doing. And
He's working remotely at this point, not...
It wasn't even a thing. I didn't know anybody who worked from home. And this is when I was living in a stone's throw from where we're sat now.
Yeah, okay.
And in my little bachelor pad flat. And I kind of thought about it, talked to my girlfriend, who's my wife now. We talked about it. And I kind of thought, well, I could go back with a silly figure and just see what happens. So I kind of went back and I said, I want £10,000 to work 24 hours a week for 3 months, which was basically doubling my salary at that time, I think. And they just went, yeah, that's great. When can you start? So I had to quickly cobble together a second-hand Mac that I bought online. I borrowed my neighbour's desk. I got a chair from my mum. I got given a printer. It was real shoestring stuff. Got it all set up. And, I had to go. I didn't even have broadband, as it was, in those days. It was like dial-up. I had to pay the premium and get broadband, It was all a big thing.
Bling.
Yeah, it was, back in those days. And then also I wasn't sure about, I need to have a company name. I needed to be registered. I needed to have a limited company, VAT, tax, all that. It's a real steep learning curve. This was December 2003. It was a real steep learning curve, and the fact working from home, which was a whole new thing, really. So that was all good. And I got all that set up, and I chose the name Absolute Graphics because when I was at university, one of the projects, we had to assume the role of a design agency. And so at that time, we came up with Absolute Design, I think we called it. Well, that wasn't available as a website. And I thought it was a really nice nod to my past to use Absolute. So I went for Absolute Graphics because I could get absolutegraphics.co.uk, which is my website, and that was available. So I went for Absolute Graphics. The other thing was that Absolute, in those days of the Yellow Pages, absolutely
I think you
appeared at
said
the
this the other
top.
day. Yeah.
Yeah, appeared at the top of the list.
And you just like
So
wouldn't.
that was
That's
so
just
important.
not a
No, you wouldn't
consideration
even think
nowadays.
about it nowadays. You know, it doesn't matter if you called Zebra Graphics. You know, it wouldn't make any difference. But back then, you needed to be at the beginning of the listings for,
Yeah.
you know. And so I set up on my own. I took the work from my previous company with me for that 3-month period. And here we are 23 years later, and they're still a customer. So 3 months has ended up becoming 23 years and counting, which is great. I don't do very much for them anymore, and their business has changed hugely. But over those years, I've done so much work for them, branding work and artwork and design.
What did you say there was a moment where you saw your work?
So from 2003 for the next sort of 5, 6, 7, 8 years, I was very busy, mainly doing my previous employer's work, but other little jobs would come in here and there. And then I got the opportunity to pitch for the Rugby Players Association, which is like the rugby equivalent of the FA,
right?
For people that don't know. They're a big organisation, quite influential within professional rugby. They represent and deal with all the Premiership teams, and they're based at Twickenham and so on. I had the chance to, through a recommendation, I got the opportunity to pitch for this work, to do all of their design work. And that in turn meant that my work would be seen by Bath Rugby, Saracens, Sale Sharks, all the big rugby teams.
Oh, so
which was massive potential.
So potential to pick up the work from the individual teams as well, then?
Potentially.
Okay.
So this was 2012, probably. By this time, I'd moved out of my bachelor pad. I was married, had kids, and but it was all to play for. I was still working in a very small little converted garage down in the New Forest, and but I had the chance to pitch for this massive job, which I did, put some concepts forward, got the job, and ended up doing the work for 5 years for them, which was a really good contract, mainly centred around their print material, but quite a lot of their socials as well, social media. And a lot of it centred around the player awards every year, so the professional player awards that they would have a massive event, a huge, no expense spared, heavily sponsored event that was at Battersea Evolution, so about 1,000 people. All the teams, all the big players from all the teams would be there, and I'm not a huge rugby fan, but I used to follow it quite closely. But I'm not a massive rugby fan, but I got to know it all quite well. And the Player Awards was also at that time televised on Sky, so I had to put together a 42-page brochure for the awards ceremony, which their design, the style, I had to come up with concepts, logo, of the whole look and feel of the whole event. And within that, there would be a 42-page brochure, an auction brochure, invites, adverts in the Times, Independent, Guardian, that sort of thing. We also did, we wrapped London Taxi, advertised the event, which I did all the artwork for, all the concepting and design. I put forward a few different ideas and they would choose one. It was a huge thing every year to do. And then I also had to do all the graphics for Sky. So all the stuff, all my design work was on Sky Sports, which was amazing. And all the backdrops and all the video screen artwork for the event, I had to do all that as well. And my wife and I got to go in 2014, I think it was, to the event. It was all paid for, hotels all paid for and everything, and I got to go. And we were sat on a table with a couple of the England players at the time, which was a real buzz. But walking into the event, they had this London Taxi outside, which was like a promotional thing. Walked into the event, and it's an enormous aircraft hangar of a event space in Battersea Park. Walked in, and the whole place was just full of my design work that I'd created in my little garage, converted garage in the New Forest. And there was 15-foot drapes of Johnny Wilkinson and all these other famous players all the way around the room. And then there was every table was covered in all the brochures and all the bits and pieces, all the printed collateral that I concepted and come up with and produced, it was a real buzz. Real buzz.
How do you feel like with that?
Oh,
That
it was an
must
amazing
be
experience.
quite incredible.
I think that has to be. I've done, even since then, I've done some really nice high-profile work, but I think that has to be the pinnacle of it, because seeing everything, just a sea of my stuff created just all over the place. It was a hell of an experience. That was great. And I did it every year I did their work for, I think it was 5 years. I think the last time I did it was 2017, I think. By which time sponsorship had changed and the budgets had changed and it was all quite pared back, but it was still great to do. But yeah, it was very detailed, a lot of work involved, quite time consuming. It was the kind of getting up at 5 a.m. Towards the print deadline to get it finished in time, you know.
What a phenomenal achievement.
Yeah, it was
and to be immersed in it. And
it all came from recommendation, which was really nice.
well, I was going to ask, 'cause, you know, did you pick up any work with the individual teams as a result of that?
I did some work for a couple of the players, some concept work, although it didn't go forward. They decided not to go ahead. I don't know if it was anything to do with what I'd done, but some of the players, I think it was at Sale Sharks, there was 2 players that were starting a clothing brand, sports clothing brand, and they asked me to concept a few ideas. So I did that, but I think that was the only thing that specifically came. I did quite a lot for the RPA though. The original client, there was quite a lot of different projects I got involved in for them. Some real nice pieces, which I've still got in my portfolio, which look nice. And
knowing you for the time I get a sense with you, because was it like a networking working space in town that you use?
That's right.
Because I remember chatting with you about it a few years ago. And then last week you were off at a networking event. And just this idea of you going off to London to go to the Adobe sort of launch thing. I get a sense that networking and connecting with people
very important.
Is important.
I think as a one-man band, I've been a one-man band all the way through. I have had the opportunity to expand in the early days when I got the opportunity to do a load of a real large amount of direct mail, which for people that might not know, in the old days, you get stuff through the post.
Yeah.
Marketing crap, basically, stuff coming through. I had the opportunity to do, I did do a lot of it, and it looked like it was going to expand. This is before e-marketing was a thing. So you're probably talking about 2004, 5 maybe. And I was producing stuff that were printed 2-3 million copies of, nationally distributed, sometimes internationally. And I was just doing them in my little studio at home.
You know, like I'm as a small business owner myself, and I think if you're going to hand over the responsibility of your brand to someone, there's that's quite a responsibility to take on, and it's quite a thing to hand over to someone else. And I imagine it being like going off, being well networked and introducing yourself, and people seeing who you are, because they're investing in
me,
in you, right?
They are. Yeah, absolutely. I was had this conversation with someone a couple of days ago saying about networking is really important because people buy from people. So it's a bit corny, but it's true. There's a lot of graphic designers out there. There's someone for everyone, and some are I've met so many over the years, of course. Some are quite introverted. It tends to go a little bit with the territory. Sometimes they're not necessarily particularly. Yeah, it's interesting. Some I've met a lot that are very quiet and don't really have a lot. Got it all going on up top, but they don't really say a lot. Whereas I'm quite. I don't have a problem with talking to people. I'm quite personal. I like to think I'm quite personable. I can talk to anybody. I don't mind presenting in front of lots of people. I've had to present my brand stuff and talk in front of a couple hundred people at presentations before. One was at Pinewood Studios where a brand was being launched. I had to do a launch of new branding, and I was standing up there in front of all these executives.
I see
as
as an
graphic
artist,
designer, but
not and I think because you've done art.
I have done art as well.
You've done
digital
art, but like you've produced.
Used to sell art,
okay,
as a side hustle for a while.
But
which was quite successful.
Which is, I I see it as very much the same thing.
Yeah.
Not the same thing, but what you're producing for the companies is artwork.
Yeah.
Because essentially, that's what an advert is, right? It's something that grabs people's attention and draws them into wanting to engage with what's produced.
Exactly. And it's nice when you get recommended for work. Yes, I mean, over the years I've worked for all sorts of different companies, different sizes, different shapes. It comes in all sorts of different. The thing with running your own business, like in my sort of, there's no possibility of saying, "Oh no, I don't really want to do that." In my opinion, I don't generally turn work away if I can avoid it, because that gets around. Oh, he's a bit picky. You don't want to work. I don't want to be like. I'd like to be the person who can deliver, and so you need to be able to pick up a project and run with it and be able to go, yeah, I can do that. And so the first time I did
Or your enthusiasm into it,
and so the first time I had to do a vehicle wrap, which is well complicated for people that have not done it before. I had to go, yeah, leave that with me, I'll do that, and then go out and research it and work out how to do it. And I've done loads of them since, but they are technical.
Yeah.
And the technical ability, I think probably because I learned my skills when it was all print-based. Having that print tech knowledge is really important, because a lot of people just haven't got that anymore. They think they can produce it on screen and it will be fine when it's printed, but quite often it creates problems. Over the years, I've had printers come to me and say, look, we've had this piece of artwork sent. It's been sent in Word or Canva or whatever it was sent in. Can you fix it? Because it's not paginated right, or it's got this problem, or there's no bleed, or this is missing, or there's a font problem. But we haven't got time to sort it out, and we don't really know what to do. So, and the printers come to me for the expert advice, which is, that's great. Even when it's stuff I've not produced, it's interesting.
I think that leads us pretty well into the hot topic then, which is like the next changes, and the fact that you've got your old skill set from having been in the industry for years that's lent into you producing what you're doing now. What is it that graphic design? I don't want to seed the question.
No,
I'm interested to hear your views. We talked about it a bit, but where are we going with it at the moment, and what skills have you got that are going to be essential going forward?
It's a massive topic, AI, and I also include Canva in that, because Canva is kind of an AI it's kind of AI back end, in my opinion, the way that it works, and it's massively used. And I think taking Canva as a piece of software and to start with, it empowers people to do stuff themselves, but that doesn't make you a graphic designer, and it doesn't make you a creative. It does allow you to put stuff together, and for social media, it's brilliant, but it's not great for larger multi-page documents, larger format. It's a little bit more involved, and I don't use it myself because it's not really a professional piece of software, but I can understand why a lot of people do, and quite often people think they're saving money, but then it has to be fixed afterwards by someone like me, and actually that costs just as much as getting me to do it in the first place. That has happened multiple times. It's the same with AI, where people have a go at doing something in ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or whatever it might be, and then they're not satisfied with how it's come out, or they're fairly satisfied, but it's low resolution. And I've had it a few weeks ago where someone had done a logo themselves, really happy with it. When it came to print, why does it all come out all fuzzy? Well, it's low res. So I can recreate it for you. Oh, how much would that be? Well, it's 250 quid, because it's quite involved. If I work out what the font is and work out this, that, and the other. Right. So how much would it have been if I got you to do it in the first place? Probably about 250 quid. So I think when AI was first announced and first became a thing, I was kind of annoyed, frustrated, and thought, it's going to take my career. My time is limited now. However, I've totally U-turned on that, and I positively embrace AI. I think it's got its place. It's a really handy tool in my toolbox, essentially, now for me. So a lot of the Adobe Suite software, which is what you generally use as a designer, which encompasses the main software. The main programs tend to be InDesign, Illustrator, and Photoshop, and Acrobat Pro to a certain degree. They've all got AI engines in them now, particularly Illustrator and Photoshop, and those AI elements of that software are fantastic. There's also Adobe Express, which I dip in and out of, and some of the things you can do within that, it streamlines my workflow. So it means I can do the same job, but better or quicker. And I think of it as being something that you need to be able to have that within your arsenal, if you like. So, for example, if I had a portrait image, but I wanted it to be landscape, or I wanted to have more sort of space either side. In the past, you'd either had to say, can we get a different photo, or we'd have to choose a different picture, or we'd have to sort of somehow Photoshop in and clone the background out to make it look right, which I have done many times on your work, actually. Yeah, which you can do. But to a certain degree, you can add in, say it's climbing wall, you could add in bits at the side and it would look all right, and it wouldn't. Whereas now, you could take that image, expand the background out, and ask AI to generate, and it will generate the background. The first time I did that, first time I used it in that way was, I think, probably using ChatGPT. I got it for an advert. I had exactly that, a portrait photograph of a professional cook in a restaurant kitchen, but it didn't have enough area at the side of him for me to put text on, and I needed the image to be landscape, really. And for this particular ad, it was in black and white, which helped. So I put it in and asked it to generate. This is a couple of years ago, and asked it to generate an area. And I looked at it, I was like, this is unbelievable. Suddenly, that saved me half an hour's time, or maybe more, or maybe the fact it wouldn't even be possible to do it, to generate the rest of this kitchen. It put in a chiller and a fridge and added all this other stuff in, which I could fade out and blend out into white so I could put text on it. It was amazing. And since then, I've sort of, I use it virtually every day for something or other. And I think it has changed my career in many ways. And I think what Canva and AI have done is kind of hoovered up those very small micro businesses where people haven't got much budget and they want to sort of have the opportunity to do things themselves, and they are very invested in their business in a very personal way, and therefore it empowers people to be able to do things that are good. And sometimes good is good enough. I understand that. I think that's enough. One of my customers explained to me that he was starting to do more and more stuff. He owns a magazine. I mean, a lot of the I used to do massive amounts of ads for them. £500, £600, £700, £800 worth a month, and suddenly that went to virtually nothing because he's got his wife doing it in Canva, all these ads. And he said the thing is, with our ads, sometimes good is good enough. It doesn't need to be bespoke, professional, and all the rest of it. The trouble is, what's happening now is that everything's starting to look the same. And once someone pointed it out to me, I can't unsee that now when I scroll through LinkedIn or Instagram and there's small businesses posting events or posting small ads or just content, and the layout and style are all the same. The colours might be different, but all the elements are the same. There's like a particular kind of paintbrush thing which people use to highlight a time or a particular thing. And that features in virtually every one of these ads, these things you see. And once someone pointed out to me and said, have you seen how they all look the same? Now I sort of like,
there's something about the I guess is good enough. I see that, and I
me too.
Sometimes I go back and forth on designs that were going out, and just go with it.
Yes,
just because it's almost like a time saving thing.
Yes,
I just don't have time to go back again.
I get all that completely. I think,
and then as a entrepreneur, as a businessman myself, I think there's there's a time. I work on projects at 11 o'clock at night,
Exactly.
and I want to get it done before I go to bed.
Yeah, I get all
And
that.
one thing we as a company working with you over the years, something that's always stood out is the time that it takes you to turn stuff around.
Yeah,
It's always impressed me how quickly you do stuff, or like how responsive you are. And I think that, amongst many other things, is why over the years we've always continued to come back, because it's like, I'll just give it to Graham. It'll be back in a few hours or by the end of the day.
That's right. Yeah,
And it was always that you were reliable, and I suppose that's for you, for any graphic designer who's working, to have that.
it's
If you're going to
important.
work with someone for years on end, you're going to learn
Yes.
these things. But with AI, well, I can have it back in
Exactly.
3 minutes
I know.
at 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah. No
And
matter
it
how
might
fast I
not
work,
be-
I won't be able to do it.
You're not going to appreciate me
No.
phoning you at 11 at night. So it's there's a convenience to it,
Here it is.
and
And
particularly
there's a cost implication. It's free.
Yeah. I mean, the time, the cost, and then so we weigh that up and say, well, where's the value added?
Exactly.
Where is that? And I think the purpose for this podcast, for sure, and not the podcast, like for me, I do believe that those times when people were sticking stuff down on paper and there was that transition into using the Mac, and my friend's dad who refused to get onto digital cameras, we are in a time of transition, and I think there's opportunities for the new generation who are coming in. And then but what do you do to not be my friend's dad?
Well, that's right.
How,
you have to embrace it.
What is it that not you, but a graphic designer can do nowadays to still be a valuable part of that process?
That's right. I think you got two options: either you give up, or you go and do something else, or you embrace it and you move forward with it in a positive way. Which I was talking to recently. I was talking to some friends of ours. I've got a daughter who's a recent graduate in graphic design, and she's quite anti-AI, kind of quite sort of trying to explain you've got to not be like that. You've got to embrace it. It's not going anywhere. It's very much part of our workflow as designers now, that you have to be able to use it in a positive way. And there are many ways that it's, like I've already said, it's from a workflow point of view, there's so much more to it. But in terms of gaining clients, for me, it's now about trying to pitch above the people that want to do it themselves. And there are many people out there that haven't got time, haven't got the impetus to want to do it themselves, or the motivation to do it themselves, just want to pass it on to someone else and let them sort it. And that's still, there is still that element. I still do social media posts and advertising and so on for pretty big companies that they're not going to get involved in doing bits and pieces themselves, because they're too big an organisation, for one thing. That there's no one really in-house to do that, and they want a professional who will reflect their brand properly, use the right fonts, the right colours, the right photography style. That's really important, and some of that gets lost, I think, when people have done it themselves, in my opinion. It can get you can lose that kind of corporate voice and corporate identity, and that's one thing that I'm very keen that I can obviously sell in as being. I can take your brand guidelines, and I had a job yesterday where someone had done some work themselves. I've worked with them in the past, but more recently they've done stuff themselves on with AI or with Canva, and they said, well, it's okay, but it's just not quite right. And it's beyond my skills to correct the problems that it's got. And some of the pixelization and the low res imagery, and also the colours and things like that. So they said, could you sort out this roller banner and these flyers for me? So I took it all on, and sure enough, all their colours were wrong for their brand colours were wrong, set up wrong, things like that. I can correct all that and make sure that it's correct. But I don't think it'd been on her radar because that's how I think, because I've done it for 30 years. I'm thinking in that way that you've got to have the right fonts, got to have the right colour splits, and there's very subtle differences, but it's got to be right. And I think that, and that was that was in a financial sort of, it's for a client that works in finance, and it's really important to them that their branding's correct.
Is it? I mean, is that the market then? Because if
it's difficult to know where the market is going forwards. Really, it's looking for bigger businesses who are passionate about that are busy running their businesses and haven't got the time to actually work in their business sometimes. But it doesn't have to be bigger businesses. I had another one earlier this week who's done a logo. I've picked up quite a few jobs like this actually over the last couple of years where they've had a go at doing their logo, but they're not satisfied with it. Can't get the colour right, can't get the font right, because AI just can't get it. So they pass it to me to finish.
Yeah, it seems to be that way.
Been done.
I've in my use of AI in logo creation stuff, if you get it right, it's great.
Brilliant.
But if it's not quite right, and then you want to make a tweak, because actually no, can we just move that over there a little bit, or can we change the font, can we change the size of that? Then that's where it seems to, at the moment at least, be like there's a meme of like a little video I saw on YouTube a while ago, and it was a lady in a room, and the title was moving a picture in Word.
I saw it.
And she moves the table slightly, and then the whole room
on the ceiling.
Oh God!
Well, that's Word for it.
And that,
I can't stand to design.
And that's AI at the moment.
Yeah,
It's like, it's great, but could you just make this little tweak, and then it just turns it upside down?
Yeah.
Oh God, that's not what I wanted.
I've seen somewhere someone probably, I think AI's learned since this was done, but he created this logo, but the text that was underneath it was absolute gibberish. It didn't even look like letters. It was just shapes, really.
Well,
that seems to have got a lot better.
The things like when it first came out, we're so silly. Like this phenomenal technology that's producing all these new photos, and then we start picking at the silly things, mistakes it makes, which it couldn't do hands to start with.
That's right.
Feet.
Problem with feet being backwards.
Lettering. There was a few things that, and those things have got better and better and better, and now we're making judgments of it because it can't make silly alterations. It's like, I just want it to make a little alteration, and next year it'll probably be better at doing that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it does seem to be getting better, and I think the rate in which it's getting better is increasing as well. Seems to be.
I think that I've always said it can't replicate human creativity, but probably in time it may well do. But whether that'll be after my time as a designer, I don't know. But I think that there's a lot of things that a human graphic designer would do that maybe the AI at the moment, the AI alternative may not. Things like researching other similar businesses like yours that have a similar size and a similar style. What do they do? What's their logo like? What's their branding? What's their branding like? What fonts do they use? That kind of thing. What colour is best for your industry? But AI is starting to learn that more and more. But I still think that there is a place for using.
But do we end up at a convergence of stuff? And it's like, well, all the other, I don't know, pick my Boulder Shack. So if other climbing businesses have got this particular font, have got this particular style, so let's use that because that's what works for them, and we all end up in the same
kind of melting pot.
Or does it say, well, that's what they're doing. So let's try and do something
Yes.
different, maybe.
Exactly.
That maybe we can lean into the skills there.
I mean, as it's all usually the way it's worked over the years is you take a brief from a client and they give you an idea of what they're looking for, and then you go off and have a bit of blue sky thinking and sprinkle a bit of magic dust on it and make it look, creative and different, and add your creativity and your talents, I suppose, and how you use the software and so on, and create something and send it back, or you send them 4 or 5 different ideas and go from there.
There was, I think I've talked about this recently. There was a New York Times article, like a quiz that went out on the New York Times website, and it put 5 questions. Each question was 2 blocks of text.
Right.
One was written by AI, one was written by a human. Or it was taken from like classic sort of literature text.
Yeah.
And the game is you go through and you click which one you prefer, or which I guess on some level you're trying to guess which one's human, which one. But in any case, it's which text is do you prefer, and then as you go through the first one, as you click on it, it'll say that was the AI one or that was the human one, and then you go to the next question. They've had, I don't know, about 80, many tens of thousands of people have completed this, and it was 54% of people preferred AI content.
No way.
Or AI content was preferred 54% of the time. So the now the same. It was the same 5 questions. It was the same 10 blocks of text overall that was used through all those tens of thousands. So there's a relatively small sample size of text. It wasn't varying it every time. So it's not saying that AI is preferred by humans, but it's saying that it is possible that AI could be preferred by humans, at least. And I would love to see, like, if where it falls for arts or where it falls for more visually produced stuff,
interior design, or that kind of thing.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
God, interior design, but whether it's able to produce stuff that we prefer. What I found with it is when I went through that, I thought at first my game was to pick the one that was written by a human. Because it says pick the one you prefer. It's like, sure, I'm going to try and pick the one that's human because that's like naturally. Yeah. And then when you click on number 1 and you click on whatever one it is, it'll say this one was written by a human and 62% of people preferred it.
Yeah.
I've clicked this one. And so I win. Great. The next one I pick. And what I realised going through it isn't that I wasn't ultimately fussed whether I got the human one or not. I was more fussed that I got the one that most people liked or not. I didn't really mind if I picked the one that was written by AI, so long as most people preferred that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to like what most people liked because that made me
you feel
normal.
Normal. Yeah.
Or that it confirmed that I have a good taste or something. I don't know. Like, I don't know what it was or why, but at some point, it didn't matter to me who was making it or how it's coming to be. I just wanted to be with the crowd on it.
It's a difficult one, isn't it?
And I wonder I'm talking with a lot of people about AI and how we kind of release our skills to it and what that means in terms of how we atrophy away from those skills. But like, does it, when we're looking at, I don't know, I recently used AI to help me reproduce a safeguarding policy. Like, I've freaking got no interest in doing that myself. I don't care whether that was written by a human or not.
Yeah.
In fact, I'd rather an AI did it because whatever. Like, but when it's music, art, design
things with
when there's
creativity in them. Yeah, human creativity is difficult. I think I had this. My wife and I were talking about this last night. You know, about universities, and our eldest son is at that age where he's off to uni, and we were talking about how when we were in our early 20s, friends were doing law degrees. Well, if you were doing a degree in law, you're pretty much certain you were going to get a job as a solicitor when you graduated if you wanted one, because you needed a degree in law to become a solicitor and then go on and do other later qualifications and so on. But you were pretty much guaranteed that you would get. But now, the legal profession is threatened hugely by the AI influence. And now, it's not a guarantee that you're going to get a job as a solicitor.
We are in the process.
It's a real interesting transition
with my businesses of getting rid of all HR support.
Exactly.
We have an external HR company that I've worked with for many years, and every time we go through any kind of HR related issues, they've supported us. Here's the templates. We go back and forth. Recently, I've been using AI to produce stuff, and we send it off to the HR company to say, are you happy with this? Because if they're happy with it, they provide insurance over sort of litigation stuff. But then they're replying back to say, yeah, perfect. And we didn't have an initial conversation with them, a brief about what's going on. We didn't use their templates. We didn't do anything with them. And then we just throw it all into AI, which is all of the meeting recordings and minutes and everything we're at. And it goes, cool, this is the paperwork you need. This is the best route forward. This is within the legal frameworks. And so, well, if you work in HR now or legal professions, but somehow I don't feel bad about that.
I think it comes back to what I was saying earlier about empowering. I think if people feel empowered by the fact they can get things sorted out themselves, they don't need to use.
Yeah, but then we use you. We use your design skills, and somehow that I know we are leaning on AI more, but it somehow like is more emotional for me to not have a human being in that loop at times. Although we still do a bit, but like there's. I feel like we should do. I feel like I want that. Because it almost feels disingenuous when I put a poster out there or a social media and I know that it was produced by a computer.
It's that classic rise of the machines kind of thing, It's sort of, but there's a lot of customers I've had or have had up until pretty recently, the beginning of this year probably, that now, they don't use me anymore because they've been doing it themselves, either with AI or with Canva, and suddenly they're like, well, we don't, because I can see the conversations. Well, we don't need to send that to Graham because we can just do that ourselves. You can see how that conversation comes, but that's £500 a month for me, and then you times that by 3 or 4 customers. That's a major amount of money that I suddenly have lost out on because people have been empowered to do it themselves, which you understand why. So it's now about trying to find new routes for me.
So with all your years of, this is the $1 million question, like all your experience and everything you've learned over time, what's the pivot? How do you diversify into using your skills? And do you have an answer?
I don't really have an answer. I'd love to say this is what I'm going to do. But for me, it's very much about trying to lean on the bigger customers that I've got that are too busy and don't want to get involved in having to do it themselves. They just need to get it done, and it has to be done to a certain level. And it has to be print ready, and it has to be right. There's a lot of that has to follow a style or whatever. There's a lot of those. So I'm still leaning into those. There's a lot of companies out there, not a lot of customers, but there are a lot of companies out there that would still work like that, where they want that human person involved in the process. So I'm pushing on that as much as I can. So I've done work for people like, in more recent years, like University of Oxford, done brochures and logos and all sorts of work for their computer science department and their postgrad program and their innovation centre. So I'm trying to lean on those kinds of things a bit more, because they're not going to get involved in getting AI to do it for them, because their brand is so strong and they're so important. Yokohama Tires, I've done a lot of their work, subcontracted, but I've done a lot of work for I've done all their advertising and their brochures and bits and pieces in the last couple of years. They're a major player, Yokohama. They're up there with like Pirelli and Bridgestone and all these other big tyre brands. So I'm working with them. And then, there's several others with the company. I do, again, subcontracted work, but they produce racing engines for Le Mans cars, and they get me to do their social media through another agency, but it's me that produces it, does the artwork. And again, it's very much like it's got to be in the right style. It has to be, the automation of AI can't necessarily be relied on at the moment to get it exactly how they want it to be.
At some point, there's a person, maybe if it's a small business, a local cafe, everything's done by that one person.
Yeah.
So nothing gets outsourced.
Yeah.
And so that's like that's a tough one to...
Yeah. You're not going to break that nut anymore.
But for a larger company, at some point they have to have someone in their team. They've got someone in their team who's doing their design work. But maybe
that's another thing that's changed, actually, I would say.
I
So it used to be, this is just like the pre-AI change or threat or whatever you want to call it in my industry. Go back probably COVID, post-COVID maybe, just. So fairly recently, that instead of employing an external designer like me, they would bring in someone who could do like a junior. So they'd pay them quite low salary, minimum wage, sort of maybe just a bit above minimum wage. So a first jobber, second jobber, maybe out of university or out of college, that can do a bit of marketing, bit of social media, bit of graphic design, maybe some photography if they need it. So a little bit, so they dip in a bit. So they've not got deep knowledge like I would have, deep knowledge in graphic design, but they can dip in to bits and pieces and do enough in each thing. So like up until fairly, there was a lot of customers I had that suddenly started employing in-house a person who could cover off all those roles. And through doing that, they don't necessarily need to use a marketing agency and a graphic designer and a social media person. They just got one person who gets paid, not loads, but suddenly they're really busy. Immediately, they're overworked with trying to cover off all these elements. But that's definitely been something I've noticed that's happened fairly recently. And probably now, even their job is threatened by AI.
Is there... Because for many industries, for many skills as we go through, like as we get older, we from that junior day of learning and absorbing everything, as we get older and we come towards not the end of our careers, but later in our careers.
I'm getting that way.
But that wealth of experience to then impart that on the younger generation that's coming up. And we do tend to, as we get older, lean into more educational teaching roles. And is there like an opportunity for it, in your instance, to lean into education and training?
I have thought about it. I have thought about if the right role came up as a lecturer or something. Probably not, certainly not a school teacher. I don't think I could handle doing that. But college or university, teaching principles of graphic design and so on, because there is still an industry. It isn't dead. It's definitely still there, and there are still plenty of jobs out there. I have considered that, or even doing my own teaching of courses or online and that sort of thing.
Just
I
because
have considered
teaching directly into industry, directly
Yeah.
into the companies.
Yeah,
So, well, look, you're going to start doing this stuff in house, but let me
Yeah.
come in and work with you to
yeah.
produce it.
Because there are a lot of skills gaps with these junior designers that come out of college with knowledge or come out of university with knowledge of how to do all these things. But I couldn't imagine saying to a recent graduate, well, you've got to do vehicle graphic, or you've got to do a large format exhibition stand or shell scheme or something like that, because they're well complicated. There's a lot in them, and working at that size, it can be a challenge. I've done it many times, but a lot of people, they can do fantastic social media posts and small things, but when it gets into a bigger thing or I have spoken to designers where they're kind of like, well, anything over, they're not very experienced, and they go, anything over kind of 4 pages, I don't really want to get too involved. Well, I've done 100 pages, documents, and they do present challenges. There's an awful lot of proofing involved. But I have considered that as a next step, how that would look and how that I would go about all of it. I'm not sure yet. I don't know, really. I'm hoping my career will continue in the way it is or has been over the last 27 years. But I am very aware that the industry is changing fast, and it presents a lot of challenges for people like me.
What is it like, graphic designer side? As an artist, how does that sit with you for having art produced by humans and art produced by computers, and this idea? So, we were talking earlier that live music will become. There's a route to live music becoming, being the way forward for musicians. To digital music, there's a whole conversation around that. But the live music, I'm talking with a digital music producer recently, who's so passionate about what he's doing, but clearly playing an instrument and going feeling the beat of the music, like that's the way forward. But then what about the art? So like is the future of art sculptures?
Because AI can't do that.
I don't know.
It's an interesting one. I mean,
do we need to see the depth of the paint strokes? Is it?
I mean, for some people, I suppose it doesn't matter how things are produced or created. Perhaps I think quite often I've said, nowadays you take your car to a garage, and the garage repairs your car for you, and you get it back, and it's, you could have a go at doing it yourself, but most people, like people would have done years ago, you could have a go on your drive on a Sunday morning, get jacked up and get underneath it and fix it. But you're not going to do that. No one does that anymore. You just rely on the garage doing it for you. And I think that there's a lot of comparisons there where now you can just, quite often at a garage, they don't get all their spanners out and listen to carburetors and tune it up, fine tune. They plug it in to a computer, and a computer tells them what the problem is. There's a lot of comparisons there with AI and digital.
Well, and now electric cars that don't have any moving parts.
They don't have any moving parts. I mean, and I've got an electric car, fantastic, and I'm a petrol head, but I love having an electric car because there's nothing to go wrong. It doesn't need cam belts and oil changes. So I think, the move forward for a lot of people don't really, I think quite often people don't seem to mind whether it's been produced by a human or by a computer. It doesn't, as long as they like what it looks like. There is definitely, therein lies a challenge, I think, really, for all of us.
There's something about seeing something and knowing the effort that went into producing it. And so like historical buildings, for example, like when you go and look at historical buildings, you go, wow, like the
Carvings.
fucking pyramids, like
Yeah,
whatever, like it does,
I
like,
know.
or a
Cathedral
castle
or something, yeah.
or cathedral, and you think, you know, the energy, the communities that have come together to build these
We
things.
recently we were down in my wife and I were down in Exeter. We walked through the grounds of Exeter Cathedral, and it was like Winchester, Salisbury, all very similar, beautifully carved. And you think this is going back to like however many hundreds and hundreds of years ago, maybe 1,000 years ago even. Some of these buildings were created, and it was someone's life's work, was these carvings on the front of this building, and probably their sons or daughters' sons, probably, life's work working on that building. And it was a whole community, and that was what you did. You left school at whatever age, and you went on to carving figures on the side of this church for the greater good, and that was their life's work. And you know,
And religion
it's
aside,
mind-boggling.
you stand in a building like you stand in Winchester Cathedral or wherever, and you look at it, and it's breathtaking,
Unbelievable, yeah.
And what to think the amount of effort that went into producing it.
And it took more than a lifetime. Some people, they would have been born while it was being built, and it was they would have finished. I know we're getting off subject here, but they're finished education. Let's say when you go back all these years, say at 12 or 13, whatever age they would have left school, and then they would have worked all of their life carving and building and doing whatever they did with this building, and then died, and it might not have opened it might not have even been finished for another 2 generations. I mean, it's so hard to get your head around that.
But in that time, I don't know what I'm talking about here, but there's the skills that were required to carve the stones and to shape the stones from the beginning to the end may not have changed a great deal.
No.
Whereas, and this hand down of skills from one generation to another, whether it's a blacksmith to his son
and it went down generations
to his son,
years and years.
And that in each generation we'd iterate and we'd evolve it, and we'd whereas now
things are moving so quick.
It's not a generational hand down. It's like it's freaking by Friday it's different. It's gone.
Well, it kind of brings us full circle in many ways, because going back when I started as a designer, it's not that it's 30. Well, when we were talking about, I was at university, it's 30 years ago this year that I graduated. And in that time, which is like part of my career, or virtually my entire working career, but not quite, things have moved on so far in that time in graphic design and business generally. With the, it wasn't that long before that where people weren't even using computers. And, so if you go back 40 years to now, it's just a sea change. You can't, and then what's going to happen in the next 30, 40 years? You can't, whereas prior to that, or prior to the 70s, if you like, before the computer, before the mic, things like computers were really a thing, the way work was done, the way society was, the way jobs was handed down generation to generation to generation. But it's very short. And again, kind of getting off subject, but it's all part of the same thing, really. In our generation, you've seen the loss of high street banks, post offices. We've seen the internet arrive. We've seen online shopping, social media, digital photography. All of these things have happened in the last 20 years, 30 years. I remember the first time I used the internet, and it was just down the road here in Bedford Place. And I was walked in. There was an internet cafe, and people had kind of heard about
what
this
year
thing.
that was?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, it was 1995.
Yeah,
it was the end of 1995, and there was an internet cafe, which was a new thing, And I could take you to the exact building where it was. And there was an internet cafe just set up. So I was on my way to a lecture, and I thought, I'll go in. I'll see what this is all about, this internet business. So I went in, and I paid for my bit of time on the thing, and sat down at this kind of archaic now computer. But I think it did have a colour monitor, which was quite new. So I sat down there and thought, wow, the internet. Sat there with my arms crossed and looked at the screen and thought, right, what should I look up? What do I do? What does it do? What is it? And it's the way we all kind of started looking at AI now. Well, what does it do? How do we? What's the? And I typed in. I went to the MTV website, and I went to one of the bands I was into at the time. They had a very basic website, and it was rubbish by today's standards. It was so archaic. But the funny thing was that I kind of finished my 20 minutes time. Didn't really produce anything. I think I printed something out, which took ages, and folded. I've just been on the internet. People started turning round, and without, this is no over exaggeration. There must have been 20 people went, "What was it like?" And they kind of were really excited.
Guys, come on in. Graham's been on the internet.
And it was exactly what it was like. I can see it in my mind's eye now. They all looked over and they went, what was it like? What did you do? And then, as I said earlier, that was my final year. So we didn't use the internet at all on my course. It wasn't part of our curriculum. Didn't use it for any research. And when I was doing my dissertation, I needed to look up a thing about it was all done with books, basically. My dissertation was about marketing within the music industry. And I needed a particular copy of this newspapers. So I went to the newspaper archive in Hendon, went up on the train, spent the day going to Hendon to the National Newspaper Archive with a microfiche, going through on the thing, looking for this particular one from June 1977. And they gave me the box full of all these microfiche. And I went through and spent like 4 hours going through all these Daily Mirrors from 1977, only to then find that someone had nicked it. I came home again without one. I mean, that just sums up the sea change. Within a year, you'd have been able to look that up online. And it's now.
Yeah. And what was it, 1995 is when the internet really became publicly accessible.
Yeah.
By 2000.
Yeah.
It was. By 2005, it was ubiquitous in every business.
It was everywhere.
Like, and so within no time at all, I'm going to close the window.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, and so by 2005, it was everywhere, and we just adapted. It just became normal so quickly.
Now you set up a business, you can't imagine not having a website or an email address. But quite an interesting one was when I first. So I went into working in this company in Slough that I touched on earlier. We didn't even have email on our computers.
Right. Oh God. I'd love
because it wasn't available on a Mac. Not in their. They didn't have it on their Office suite or whatever. It wasn't really. We weren't able to support it in their offices. So we had a separate PC, a Microsoft thing, computer next to our Macs that had an email account on it. So that it was like Studio app. So you didn't have Graham app,
Yeah.
So we had to you get an email in on that, which you didn't get many. You got like 1 or 2 a day, and it'll come in on there, and that would be a request. But the way that work was done then, again, so archaic. But we had the fulfillment house of the company I worked in was based in Portsmouth. We were in Slough, and they had a big warehouse on an industrial estate on the outskirts of Portsmouth, full of printed material, pallets full of brochures and leaflets, letterheads and business cards and whatever, all this stuff. To make amendments, what they would do is they had some poor girl down there called Hannah. Someone would say to her, well, this is out of date. This has got a spelling mistake on it. It was out of date. So she would get a photocopy of this booklet, photocopy all the pages, mark up on a bit of paper, mark it up with a pen, stick it in an internal envelope, post it to us up in Slough. We'd get it the next day. We'd open all the internal envelopes. Oh, there's some amends from Hannah. Right, we need to change that comp slip oh, there's a spelling mistake, or they want to change the phone number. Quickly change the artwork, print out a new copy, proof on a laser printer, so really low quality. Stick it in an internal envelope, post it back down to Hannah in Portsmouth. She'd look at it and go, there's an extra space in there. She'd mark it up again, put it in an envelope, post it back up to us in Slough. It'd take bloody ages to get stuff produced. And that was how it was done, because we didn't have Acrobat. It's before Acrobat became a thing, PDFs, email. It's just so hard to believe that now it then went to obviously being relatively instant with the way we've done work, with proofing and PDFs. And now we're at a stage where you could do it on AI, where it's done within seconds and it's immediate.
I quite often think of the time we're in now, like the advice that someone gave me whilst riding a mountain bike down through a forest. A friend of mine who said, like, I was getting into mountain biking for a while, and he said, the best advice I got is look at the path. Okay, that seems really obvious. But yeah, but don't look at the trees. The temptation is to look at the trees, just to see the things that are gonna cause you a problem. Don't look at them, look at the path. Because wherever you look, that's where you're going to go. And if you look at the trees, you're going to crash into them.
Interesting.
And this idea that we have to stay focused on where we want to go. And I get a sense with you that, all right, we don't know where the path goes, but you seem to be focused on the path, and you seem to be focused on like the sort of, you've talked about other people who you've worked with, or I certainly have. There's a sense of focusing on the trees and the problems, and I'm not sure that's going to lead to getting further down the path. That's going to lead to crashing into a tree. And I think
you've got to roll with it. I think you have to. I think I'm not old enough to retire. I don't want to. I love what I do too much. I think I don't want to think, oh well, AI is going to take my job, I'm just going to bow out. Because that's just defeatist, and that doesn't help anybody. I think it's about focusing on the path, focusing on how it can help you, how it can rolling with it. Because we've all it's going to impact everyone's jobs and everyone's careers and everyone's way of life to a lesser or greater degree. It's not going anywhere. It's here to stay. Just like the internet was here to stay. It wasn't people fought against. Oh, well, the classic one with that is travel agents. It used to be travel agents up and down the high street, and estate agents as well. And they're industries where, who goes to a travel agent to book a holiday nowadays? Into a shop. Old
There's
people,
still
maybe.
one or two in town.
There's
I don't
a few,
understand what they're doing.
I know, not a lot, I wouldn't think. Cruises, probably.
Right.
High-end high-end
old people.
Safaris and old people, But there's not many. And it's the same with estate agents. Again, you have to walk far down here. There was a road, London Road used to be full of estate agents. There's still a couple, but there's not as many as there used to be, because everyone goes on Rightmove.
Purple Bricks and all these online versions of it.
Zoopla and all the rest of it. And the same with holidays, We all do it. We all book hotels and we all book this, that and the other online.
My God.
Flights.
Won't that be a joy? When you're buying a house and you don't need human solicitors in the loop. Freaking bring on that
so
day.
much quicker.
There's so much. I mean, that's the stress, isn't it? That's the pinch point of doing so much stuff, is when you got these slow
traditional systems.
Because bless her, Hannah, I hope she's doing well nowadays. But those people who are in the loop.
But those people in the loops, I mean, it slowed everything down so much. And suddenly we were like, we can send stuff down to Hannah on email now. It just seemed such a revelation, And that was probably 2000.
Right.
And suddenly someone said, well, we've got Acrobat. Wow, that's that software I learned about a couple of years before.
I didn't think it was going
in Essex. I didn't think it was going anywhere. It seemed a bit crap to me at the time. And then suddenly Acrobat is king.
Well, I've really enjoyed the conversation today, Graham. It's been good fun. On a microphone or not, I think I'd love to chat with you in a year's time and in 2 years' time. I mean,
find I'm working in a coffee shop. That's right.
Have a latte, please.
No, hopefully not.
I think I don't know where this is going, but I think looking at the path is definitely the way forward.
One thing I have found is that, to wrap it up, is that I've been very grateful to all my customers, all the jobs I've done over the years, and I think where work has pivoted a bit in the last few years, changed slightly, it's made me when I do get jobs in, I grab them both hands, really pleased to be doing them, really happy to do them, don't take anything for granted anymore. Probably did years ago, I think that's an age thing as well, but I've always been really pleased that people want to use me and have been pleased with what I've produced for them.
I go back to this thing, my experience working with you, but just work, there's something about handing over that, there's a handing over the reins to the presentation of a business to another person. It's quite it's a big thing to do, and to had that in your hands for at least one or two of my business over the years. It's been really reassuring, and there's a comfort to having that relationship.
I think there's a lot of people that do graphic design or work in it or have worked in it. I've done it for a long time, which does bring with it a lot of experience and my wife always says it's a safe pair of hands. And I like to think that I can do that with people. I can take a job and run with it. And I don't feel, probably in my early years, I used to get fazed by certain things. I think, it's a bit too much above me, and about imposter syndrome a bit, where you think, maybe I'm not really a graphic designer, maybe I'm not good enough. Obviously, this far down the line, I've made a career of it for a long time, so I must be doing something. I must be a graphic designer, surely.
I reckon you've made it now.
I think I'm all right, but which I feel really grateful for. It's a cool job. It's a nice thing to be able to say you're a graphic designer. It sounds great.
So, if anyone wants to find you, where could they find you?
You can link with me on LinkedIn, Graham Bell, or absolutegraphics.co.uk is my website.
Brilliant.
They're the best things. Also on Instagram, Graham_graphic design.
Fantastic. Graham, thank you for your time.
Thank you.